Hi, everybody. Thanks for hopping on. We're going to go ahead and get started right at 1:15. So we've got about a minute until we'll get started. I know a few of you are probably going to be logging on as I'm speaking, so just hang tight and we'll start at 1:15. All right, it is 1:15, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again for being here on this lovely Thursday afternoon. I'm going to try to get us out of here on time, so we're going to just jump right in. So welcome to Loyola's Active Bystander Training. My name is Alexa Ross. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the registered dietitian here at the Wellness Center at Loyola. We are here today to talk about what it means to be an active bystander, what are some tangible steps we can take, and we're really just building upon the information that was already discussed at orientation about, again, what it means to be that active bystander. Before we begin, I want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. Additionally, this webinar is going to be interactive, so there are going to be opportunities for you to answer my questions in the question and answer box. The chat function is disabled, and we're going to be using the polling modality as well. So I will launch a handful of different polls. I really hope that you engage with me. It's going to be way more exciting for all of us if we're using those engagement opportunities. I also want to say before we begin that some of what we discussed today is going to be funny, some is going to be serious. We're going to be talking about alcohol, sexual violence, and racism, just to name a few topics. So I ask that you do what you need to do to take care of yourself, whatever that means for you, and please do what you need to do to stay engaged with this presentation. At any point, if something comes up, we are always a resource here for you at the Wellness Center. So we'll go ahead and jump right into our goals for today. Why are we doing this? What's the purpose? Why are we all here? Well, here are a couple different goals I have for us today. I want to help raise awareness around what it means to be a bystander and an active bystander. I want to help increase motivation for you to feel comfortable stepping into a situation and helping out and making a difference. Of course, we want to develop those skills in how we actually help out in situations. And of course, we want to do it safely. So I want to increase safety and we want to have fun through it all. So how we're going to have fun too is that engagement piece. So please interact with me at those opportunities. So it's really nice to start talking about active bystander and starting with the student promise because it's a really natural tie-in. So for those of you that do not remember, those of you that do remember the student promise, there are 3 tenets, and those are to care for the self, to care for others, and to care for the community. So these 3 tenets are a way to set high expectations for yourself and for members here in the Loyola community. We want to act and help out others when they're in need of help, and we want to be those active bystanders and look out so we can all live in a safe community together here at Loyola. I'm a big context person, so I want to make sure we're all on the same page with some definitions. So I want to talk about the definition bystander. So the definition of bystander is someone who is witnessing something. It's literally in the word, right? It's somebody who stands by. So this could be a good thing. It could be, watching a movie or watching a street performance, or all of you watching me present this topic in this presentation. You're all bystanders in those situations. It could also be maybe a not so good thing. It could be something problematic or discriminatory, such as the people here in this photo. So that is the definition of a bystander. As we go throughout this presentation, we're going to talk about what it means to be an active bystander. So over the next couple slides, I'm going to be sharing a couple different stories. I am sharing these stories not to scare you, not to make you feel badly. They are more intense stories and they're all real life examples. And we here at the Loyola and here at the Wellness Center specifically use what's called a harm reduction approach. So we recognize that although we don't want you to engage in some risky behaviors, we know that you still may choose to do so. So again, these stories are not meant to scare you, but they're more to highlight the fact that one person, one active bystander can really change the outcome of a situation. So the first story I want to tell is about Matt Sunshine. So Matt Sunshine is here pictured on the screen. And this happened a number of years ago now at this point, but he was a freshman at Northwestern University, so just up the road, not too far from here. And after his finals in his spring quarter, he started drinking alcohol inside his residence hall. One day, he decided to engage in a drinking contest with another student. Within the course of an hour, Matt drank 17 shots of vodka. I'm going to repeat that. In the course of an hour, Matt had 17 shots of vodka. That's a lot of alcohol. During that hour, there were a handful of students coming in and out of his room. They were high-fiving him, cheering him on. And at one point around midnight or so, there were about four students or so helped carry Matt back down to his room and help put him to bed. He was still awake at this point when they were carrying him down. He hadn't passed out or anything yet. They put him to bed and Matt never woke up. Matt died of alcohol poisoning. And I tell this story again, not to scare you, but to highlight a real life example. I'm going to now tell a second story that has a very similar plot line, but a very different ending. And then we'll go ahead and break down the difference between these two stories. So the second story I want to share with you is, again, another example of bystander behavior. And it took place right here at Loyola. So literally home base right here. This again was a number of years ago. I believe it was 2011 or 2012, and it happened during the first week of classes in the fall semester. There were a group of students who were hanging out, they were drinking, and at some point there were two guys at the party who decided to have a vodka drinking contest. Keep in mind, they already had a handful of beers earlier in the day. So both guys decided that they were going to fill 2 solo cups with vodka. Fill them to the brim. So 1 solo cup is 16 ounces, so 2 would be 32 ounces. We know that 1 ounce of a liquor is going to be 1 standard drink. So these guys were trying to drink 32 standard drinks. That's a lot of alcohol. So one student, the first student, was able to get down that whole first cup of vodka. He then refilled it. He didn't make it too far into cup number 2 before he started throwing up. The other student in the contest was able to drink both cups of vodka before he stumbled away and ended up passing out cold. People at the party were trying to get that student who was throwing up back down to his room because he was making a scene. They didn't want to get in trouble. But as you can imagine, it was really hard to cover up, and the RAs found out and ended up calling campus safety. By the time EMS and campus safety arrived, the student had passed out and was unresponsive. Meanwhile, the other student who was also drinking the vodka was never mentioned to campus safety. It was not until the ambulance was quite literally pulling away when one student pulled aside a paramedic and said something to the extent of, "Hey, I don't want to get him in trouble, but there was another person drinking a lot of alcohol, and I think you should check on him too." So the paramedics found the second student. He was unresponsive at this point. Both students got transferred to the hospital. That second student that almost got left behind was actually in a coma for 2 days. Thankfully, both of these students did recover. They didn't remember anything that happened. And had it not been for that one person to speak up and say, "Hey, I think there's someone else that you should check on," to the paramedics, this story could have a very different ending. So I tell these stories again, not to scare you, but to highlight the importance of what one person's actions and being an active bystander can do. And it really, in this case, was a life or death situation. So when we juxtapose these stories between Matt Sunshine and the students here at Loyola, we can see, again, very similar plot line. However, the difference being that one story, the Loyola story specifically, had an active bystander involved, and the ending here was very different than, unfortunately, what it was with Matt Sunshine. The third example I want to talk about is of Darnella Frazier. So I'm not sure if anyone knows who she is by name, but she's pictured here, or maybe you recognize this picture of her. She is 17 at the time of this photo, and she was the one who filmed the murder of George Floyd. That video documentation, as most of us know, became absolutely pivotal in holding George Floyd's killer accountable. So all of these stories are real life examples of bystander behavior. They are all intense, and I do recognize that all of these stories are life or death situations. And again, I'm telling you this to highlight the fact that it is incredibly important to be that active bystander in various ways, whether it is, mentioning to paramedics, hey, someone's not doing well, or something similar to what Darnella Frazier did in her story, where she simply videotaped what she saw going on and how much of an impact that really truly did have. So now I'm going to ask you a couple different polling questions, and I hope that you engage with this. The first question I'm going to ask you is, what percentage of your fellow peers would intervene if they were witnessing something problematic? So what percentage do you think of your fellow peers would intervene if they were witnessing something problematic? So go ahead and answer that poll for me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results out. Yeah, this is pretty on par with what we've seen and what I have been seeing since I've been doing these trainings. The majority of us felt that it was between 21 and 60% of our fellow peers would intervene if they saw something problematic. So that, again, is pretty on par with what the trends I've been seeing are. So the second question I'm going to ask you is, would you be willing to intervene if you saw something problematic? So your options are yes, no, or it depends. Would you be willing to intervene if you saw something problematic? All right, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share out those results. So yeah, the majority of us said yes, or it depends. You would be willing to intervene, or, it definitely depends on the situation. Super valid, right? Like what is the situation? What is happening? I would need to know more information in order to determine if I would intervene or not. So why I'm showing you this is because we had a similar research study here at Loyola back in 2014, where we asked different first-year students their willingness to intervene in a situation. So that second question I just asked you, and 83% of those students said, yeah, I'd be willing to intervene. So that's very similar to what we just saw in our little smaller sample size, right? And that's awesome, because that shows that most people would be willing to intervene in a problematic situation. We then asked that same group of students if they thought others would intervene in a problematic situation, and the results were around 62%, which again is a very similar result to what we just saw a few seconds ago in our tiny little smaller sample size in this webinar. So I'm telling you this because it highlights the fact that we tend to underestimate the willingness of others to intervene. We often think that the number is going to be much lower than it actually is. So chances are, if you're willing to intervene, you're probably in good company. And this goes to highlight the fact that it really just takes that one person sometimes to step in, and other people are likely going to follow and have that willingness to intervene. So I now want to ask you to use the question and answer function on this webinar to answer this. Why don't you think people intervene? What might be some reasons that people do not step into a situation or do not intervene in a situation? So go ahead and use the Q&A function and send me some answers. Anxiety? Yeah. fear, concern for their own safety. They're scared. Maybe they're shy. They think others are going to help. Yeah, they're scared of getting in trouble. Maybe they don't know how to intervene. Yeah, don't want to get in trouble, might put them into a dangerous situation, might be a risk to themselves. Yeah, these are all super, super valid. They think someone else might help, fear of being judged. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much for responding. I really appreciate the engagement piece there. Yeah, these are all absolute valid reasons why people don't intervene. So the one answer I was looking for to help transition us into the next slide is assuming other people would intervene. That tends to be a really big one we hear all the time is, oh, someone else will do it. Someone else will intervene in that situation. And we call that the bystander effect. So we're going to watch a quick little video talking about this phenomenon called the bystander effect. And I like this video because it does a very good job of keeping it in a very succinct answer, kind of giving some of the history and how do we actually go about changing that bystander effect? How do we change that social norm? So I'm going to go ahead and play this video and we'll talk about it afterwards.
The bystander effect comes from an experience years ago in New York, this famous Kitty Genovese experience, where a young woman was being stalked and stabbed, and many, many people heard her screams, and no one came to her aid. No one even called the police. And two psychologists, actually buddies of mine, John Darley and Bib Latney, in trying to understand why did no one help, they came up with the notion that perhaps the problem was there were too many people, and that in this situation, everyone assumes someone else will do it. We call it diffusion of responsibility. And so they started doing a series of experiments where they did this, have a single person versus a group, creating emergency situation. And the conclusion was, in fact, the more people physically present in an emergency situation, the less likely it is that any one of them will help. Whereas when there's a single person in an emergency, the probability they will help goes up. And why is that so? Well, what Darley and Latney, the researchers, formulated was that when you're in a group, sometimes even with strangers, and you look around and no one is helping, the social norm is do nothing, don't get involved, mind your own business. So the key then is, how do you change the social norm? The way you change it is the power of one. Namely, the moment someone goes to help, within seconds, others join in. Because when you take action, you have a ripple effect. That is, people look around and say, the new norm is help, do something. So now that you know about the bystander effect, it's not a check mark on a multiple choice test, Darley Latney, bystander effect, diffusion of responsibility, da, da, da. No, it means that whenever I'm in a situation, I now say, bystander effect is in action, what do? Here's what I do, here's how I get other people involved. We are giving you knowledge, not to make you smart, but to make you a social activist, to make you a social change agent.
All right, so I like that video because it does highlight the fact that we need to change that social norm, right? We need to be that first person to step up and step into a situation, and chances are other people are going to follow and also want to help out. I want to talk about online harassment and abuse because so much of our lives these days are lived online. I'll be the first person to tell you I have all the social medias. I love me some TikTok, with some boundaries, of course, but so much of our life these days is going to be online, and we can't talk about bystander intervention and being an active bystander without also talking about how we can be an active digital bystander. So I'm going to ask another poll, and this is asking how many of you have witnessed online harassment or abuse, or maybe yourself have even been a target to online harassment and abuse. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share those results. So yeah, the majority of us. And I think that just goes to show why it's important to bring what it means to be an active digital bystander into the conversation, because it is not just going to be in-person situations that we need to talk about. We need to talk about the online presence as well, and we'll talk about that as we go through this presentation. So now I want to transition and talk about some reasons why people do intervene. So go ahead and in the question and answer function, type in some reasons of why somebody would intervene in a situation. You have some freebies up on the screen now, which is fine if you want to post those in here. But if you can think of some other reasons why people might intervene, go ahead and do that now, please. Yeah, they've been in that situation before. Moral responsibility, absolutely, right? It's the right thing to do to stand up for your friends, the safety of yourself or others, to do the right thing. You want to help, protecting someone you love, feeling guilty if you don't do something maybe. So kind of maybe that ethical moral compass piece, some empathy. It's a call to action. Yeah, absolutely. I'm scrolling through these. Thank you so much again for engaging and participating in that. All great answers. So definitely ethical and moral, right? I saw that one a lot in here. It's the right thing to do to step up and help somebody, right? We have those moral compasses that are telling us that it's important to do the right thing. And that kind of is in the same vein with wanting to help somebody out, right? Maybe it is someone you know or someone you care about and you feel the need to protect them, or you feel that obligation because you do care and you have that empathy. Sometimes it could be a liability. I think about a lot of, fraternities and sororities across different college campuses. They have somebody in a risk management position as like a risk management officer, if you will. And at that point it becomes a liability, and they're intervening because they don't want the legal repercussions of something, right? Sometimes it could also be to maintain a reputation, whether that be the reputation of yourself, or maybe it's a reputation of another group on campus you're part of or you share that identity with. So, I think about if you're part of a club or an organization, or maybe you're part of athletics or something, you're now carrying the reputation of that as well, and not just yourself. So you want to maintain that stand-up citizen reputation, if you will. So we know from research that you are more likely to help in a situation if you know how to. So really the back end of this presentation is going to be talking about those steps that we can take, and some of those like tangible action steps we can take to help develop those skills and know how to help in a situation. So really there are 4 steps we need to talk about. We need to first talk about noticing the event. Then we need to talk about interpreting that event as a problem. We need to talk about assuming personal responsibility. And then we're going to talk about those skills or those action steps of knowing how to help, how we can speak up and step in. So we're going to go ahead and break these down over the next couple slides. So the first step is to notice the event, right? So we are constantly bombarded with different messages, demands for our attention. We're constantly distracted. Like I said, I have all the social medias. I'll be sitting watching TV on my couch and I'll be scrolling through whatever. Multitasking, is definitely something I'm very much so guilty of. And that said, I usually in those situations may not be paying attention to what's going on around me. I know that if I'm walking between buildings on campus, or if I'm on the L or on the bus, I usually have my headphones in and I'm not really paying attention to what's going on around me. So it's important to take on that challenge of maybe not putting your headphones in or taking time to see what's going on around you. So I encourage you in the near future to walk from class to class without your headphones in, or next time you take the bus or the L, to pay attention to what's going on around you, not only for your own safety, but also as part of becoming an active bystander. So the second thing we need to do is to interpret it as a problem. So whatever we notice, whatever event we notice, we need to interpret it as a problem. We really like this tweet. It's a little outdated, but I still think it does a really good job of giving a good example of interpreting a situation as a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. Ricky was just acting like he wasn't my boyfriend at the gym, saying to me, "You look nice in those leggings. Can I take you out sometime?" This girl that I don't know comes up to me and says, "Hey, you ready to leave?" I informed her that he was my boyfriend, but girl, I appreciate you. So this is a really great example of what does it mean to interpret something as a problem. So this third party, right? This girl, this other girl in this story did not have all the information on the situation. She saw a guy hitting on a girl at the gym, and she decided to give this other girl an out, right? Like she said, "Hey, are you ready to leave?" The girl then, the girlfriend then informed her, "Hey, actually, this isn't a problem. Like, I know him. He's my boyfriend. Like, it's fine." But it was appreciated, right? So even if we interpret an event as a problem and it's not actually a problem, chances are people are still going to appreciate it, and they're still going to appreciate that you cared and you gave them that potential out, or you used one of the tools we'll talk about to intervene in a situation. So this is a really good spot, and I like to talk about this here because it's more of a food for thought kind of thing, but we need to check for our implicit bias. When we are interpreting something as a problem, I know it can often be kind of confusing, and maybe we don't know enough information to know what's going on. So I like to think about this, and I want you to use the question and answer function here to think about what groups, which population or group of people, or groups of people, I should say, do we often as a society or stereotypically think of needing the most help? So go ahead and put some of those answers in here. Women, yep. Homeless people, yeah. Children, yeah, absolutely. People of color, white women, yeah, absolutely. Minority communities, yeah. Disabled people, yes, absolutely. Marginalized groups, yeah, absolutely, right? And also, we think about like the elderly too, right? Like the idea of like the old lady crossing the street kind of thing. Those are the groups of people that we stereotypically or societally think need the most help. So it's important to check our biases here when we're interpreting an event as a problem, because oftentimes we leave out other groups, right? Like a big group we tend to leave out are men, right? We often have this idea or this narrative that men are masculine and strong and can hold their own, which may be true. However, we need to kind of be mindful of that and also kind of check ourselves when we have a double standard maybe at play. We think about if we saw a girl maybe really aggressively hitting on a guy at a bar, we're going to say something like, "Oh, he's going to get lucky." We're maybe not necessarily concerned about that. Whereas if we had that flipped and we saw a guy aggressively hitting on a girl at a bar, there may be some concern of, "Hey, the situation's a problem." So again, it's just something to be mindful of, and it's important to check our biases, in these different situations when we are trying to interpret whatever we're seeing. Is it a problem? Is it not a problem? So kind of on the flip side of this, I want to see and ask you, which groups of people, which populations of people do we societally or stereotypically feel are the ones that are causing the harm? And again, this is another great place to check our biases. So go ahead and in the Q&A and shoot me some messages or answers that you feel would fit into this group. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of men. Yep. Black men. Yeah. Yep. White men, rich men, men. Yep. Angry men, authority figures, mentally ill. Yeah. Homeless people. Yep. Awesome. Exactly. All types of men. Yeah, these are great answers. I really appreciate you guys engaging with me on that. So, right, stereotypically and societally, we have these biases of these populations of people that are, potentially going to be causing the harm. And it's important to check in with ourselves on that, because we maybe don't have enough information on the situation. We may not know all of the players involved in a situation we're seeing, and we maybe don't have the power to intervene. So again, this is not to make things more cloudy or murky or confusing. It's more of a food for thought kind of thing, because the point of this webinar is not to go through every single possible, what if you see this kind of situation, because A would be here for 100 years, but also it's hard because every situation kind of depends. So I really want to just plant that seed, that little thought experiment, if you will, and just if you in the real world, air quotes, are noticing an event and seeing it as potentially a problem, to kind of just check yourself a little bit too. But I also want to acknowledge that it can be hard to understand these different situations, and it can be really confusing. And I think it goes to show that in situations where we do know all of the players and we have enough information, we really truly can make a big difference when we are engaging in active bystander behavior. So the third step is to assume personal responsibility. This is being that first person, taking it upon yourself to step in and intervene, and knowing that you're likely in good company and that we are going to get help from other people and we're looking out for the greater good. We're doing the right thing. All those reasons we talked about of why we could intervene. And it's really important to be that first person to help remove or end that diffusion of responsibility. I also want to honor the fact that we need to assess our capacity to show up, because maybe you didn't sleep well the night before. Maybe you didn't eat enough. Maybe your own mental health is not, in the best place right then in that situation. And you need to check your capacity to step in. Are you willing to take the risks? What are your boundaries? And if you decide that you are in a space to, and maybe your capacity is enough to step in and intervene and be that person that assumes personal responsibility, take that deep breath, ground yourself, and be that first person and know that others are also going to help as well. So now we're going to talk about the fourth and final step in how do we be an active bystander, and that's going through what we call the 5 Ds. So the Ds are all, we'll go through them over the next couple of slides. These are all options or choices you have when trying to figure out how can I intervene in a situation. So the first D is going to be to be direct. This is something where there are a lot of different modalities. We can ask questions, we can use our body, we can call a situation for what it is, and we can use I statements. So for example, if you hear somebody, if you hear somebody using like a racial slur or something, you can call it what it is and say something if you feel comfortable enough, like, hey, that wasn't cool, or that type of language you just said isn't okay. What you did, it wasn't funny and it made me uncomfortable. You can ask questions if you see a situation happening, something like, is this person bothering you? Or do you want me to call a friend for you? Those are all examples of being direct. We can also use our body in different situations. I do want to emphasize here that your safety is our #1 priority. So if you see people in a fist fight, please do not use your body to break up that fight. We want to make sure that you are not putting yourself in greater harm. So this is an example more so of, I often think of, if you're at a dance club, which assuming none of you have been to a dance club, if you are just going to dance with your friends and have a good time and you're just trying to dance, right? And there might be some people trying to dance on you, there is a natural tendency to like form a circle. And we often see if someone's dancing on you, that person that doesn't really want to be danced on gets pulled into the middle of the circle and everyone else's bodies kind of shut that other person out. So we're physically using our body in space to be direct and intervene in these situations. We also can use I statements. So I statements are a very powerful, in my opinion, underutilized tool that can go a really long way. So these are typically used in situations that are not immediate. There are multiple opportunities to intervene. So I statements could be something like, I care a lot about you, and I've noticed that you've been sleeping a lot and haven't been going to classes. Are you doing all right? Or every time we eat in the dining hall, I see that you're not eating very much. I actually don't see you eat ever. Are you okay? Is there some way I can support you? So it's using those I statements because we're not trying to place blame on other people, but it's a really direct way to intervene. And I see this being used a lot if you feel comfortable enough with it. The second D is to distract. This is something like changing the subject, making a commotion. If you're online, you could bury a comment in positive content. And I often think of this like, if you're out somewhere, you can always make up the excuse of like, oh, my mom's calling me, I gotta go, or whatever. Or you could like pull someone in. I think this is a good example of the tweet we read earlier. The one girl at the gym gave the other girl an out. She distracted her by saying like, hey girl, you ready to leave? You always can use the like, I'm going to the bathroom, come with me, and pull your friends with you for that too, is another example I see used a lot of times. The third D is going to be to delegate. So delegating is pulling other people in to help you out. So I really want to emphasize that this is typically the tool to use if you do not feel safe. If you feel unsafe physically, emotionally, socially, delegating is going to likely be your best option. And we often think of delegating as kind of going up the chain, right? We think of it as talking to your RA, talking to a faculty member, a staff member, calling campus safety, or getting law enforcement involved. But it doesn't have to be. It could also be going out as well. You could pull in mutual friends that maybe know that person a little bit better than you do, or help you feel more comfortable with it as well. I also want to honor the fact that everybody has different comfort levels with law enforcement. So, except in life and death situations, I always recommend that you ask permission from the person you're trying to help if it's okay to get law enforcement involved. Please, if it's a life or death situation and it's an emergency, please, please, please call law enforcement so that they can get the help and the attention that's needed. The fourth D is document. So this is going to be things like screenshots or videos. We saw this with Darnella Frazier. If you're taking a video, I often recommend that you are speaking the date and time out loud, and that if you're able to film like landmark locations, please try to do that as well. I also want to say here that you should always ask permission to post any documentation. Ask permission from the person that you're trying to help first before you post it. The fifth D is a little bonus add-on step you can take, and this occurs after the incident has occurred, and it's to check in with that person that was being harmed. It's to ask them how you can support them or offer listening and even share resources or share documentation that maybe you have. So again, I want to emphasize that your safety is our #1 priority. And that is for both in person as well as online. So make sure that you're tightening your own digital safety, that your passwords are secure, that you're not saving passwords to like public computers or anything like that. And that we are never abusing or harassing back, because we're in the business of breaking that cycle of abuse and trying to prioritize that person that we're helping or that person that's being harmed. So we never want to abuse or harass back. I do want to talk about the Good Samaritan policy as well, because I often hear students say a reason that they don't intervene in situations, especially when it comes to alcohol and drug use, is because they don't want to get in trouble, especially if they're underage or something like that. So the Good Sam policy, or Good Samaritan policy, also known as the medical amnesty policy, states that if you or your friend has been drinking or doing drugs and you need medical attention, please get them that attention. You're not going to have to go through the formal sanction process with the conduct office. It will not be on your school record. You may have to complete some other sanctions or like education classes, but it's not going to be the formal sanction process. You can call on yourself and you can call multiple times. Those are 2 questions I often get asked with this one. So please, in situations where you need medical attention and you or a friend has been using alcohol or drugs, please call campus safety and get that medical attention you need. I also want to review the signs and symptoms of alcohol poisoning, because alcohol poisoning can get very serious very quickly, as we saw in the 2 stories I told in the beginning. So some of those signs and symptoms to look out for are, the skin is really blue, it's cold, it's clammy. If the person's breathing is shallow or slow or irregular, sometimes maybe the breathing has even stopped. If the person is completely unresponsive, you shake them, you pinch them, and they're not waking up, that is being unresponsive. And if the person is puking while they're passed out. If you're not sure you notice any of these, please call campus safety. I say call campus safety and not necessarily calling 911, because campus safety is familiar with the buildings on campus, whereas if you call 911 and say, I'm in Simpson, they may not know where that is as quickly as someone that part of Loyola's EMS team would know. So we're going to run through a couple different scenarios. There are 3, and I will be asking for you guys to complete some polls as we go through these. So this first scenario is, in a comment on a friend's Instagram, you see someone has posted sexist language and a racial slur. So we have some options here. We can respond by being direct, and we can at the person and say that their comment wasn't okay. We could distract by posting a GIF of kittens. We could delegate and check in with your friend and inquire about notifying Instagram of the comment. We can document by taking a screenshot of the comment in case your friend wants to do any follow-up. And we can delay by DMing your friend afterwards and asking how they're doing and offering support. So which of these 5Ds would you feel comfortable in this situation? I do want to say that they are all valid and appropriate responses to being an active bystander. There isn't a wrong answer here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll and share out the results here. So it looks like pretty evenly split for the most part. A lot of people felt that they would be comfortable being direct. A lot of you felt delegating would be the best, documenting, delaying, and a few of you even would post some kittens. I like that one. I don't know how effective it would necessarily be, but I do think it is an appropriate response still in a form of distracting. So again, there are no wrong answers with this, but I'm just curious what everyone feels most comfortable with, and I'll make some observations after we get through the next couple scenarios as well. So the second scenario is you notice your roommate has been acting differently this semester. They are going out often and coming back very drunk many nights of the week, and you don't notice them going to class anymore. So here are a few different options we have and how we could respond. We could be direct. One afternoon, approach your roommate and let them know you've noticed the change in behavior. Ask if anything happened recently and if you can help. You could distract them by saying one night before your roommate leaves for the night, tell them you have an extra ticket and to a show and ask them if they want to come with you. And to delegate, we could fill out a behavioral concerns team report on Loyola's website. So go ahead and same idea here. Let me know which of these 3 options and how you would respond you would feel most comfortable with, or you would feel would be the best. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So an overwhelming amount of you would be direct and would directly approach your roommate and have a conversation with them about it. All right, and then the third and final scenario for us is during a night out at a house party, you've been keeping an eye on a friend who's been flirting with someone new. You notice that she's drinking more than normal and is getting really drunk. Towards the end of the night, you see your friend being led upstairs. So a couple different ways we can respond to this, right? We could be direct, approach the couple, inform your friend you believe she's too drunk and needs to go home. You could distract, approach your friend, tell her you lost your purse with her wallet inside and you need help finding it. Or you could delegate and inform the host of the party what you're witnessing and ask for help getting your friend safely away. So again, same idea here. I'm going to launch this poll. And I'm curious which of these 3 potential interventions you would feel most comfortable with. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end it and share the results. So again, pretty decently split for the most part. It looks like most of you would choose the distraction method. Some of you would be direct, and then some of you would also feel comfortable delegating. So an observation I have noticed over, the multiple times I've given this presentation and this training is that typically when we feel comfortable or we know the person involved, we usually feel that direct is going to be the best option, but not always. And typically if we feel unsafe, delegating is going to be the best option. But again, none of these are incorrect. These are all appropriate answers. And I really appreciate you guys engaging with those polls and all of the question and answers we've been doing. So this is a great place to review consent. I know that you all have heard a lot about consent through different orientation things and just being on campus now for a couple weeks. So I want to review Loyola's definition of consent, and it is that it is freely given, mutually understandable permission to engage in a specific sexual activity. I want to emphasize the fact that it does not need to be verbal. It can be verbal, but it doesn't have to be. And that consent can be withdrawn at any time. Even if you've already given it, you can always withdraw it. We often think about consent as that stoplight idea where we have the green light until we get that red light. And I really want to flip that narrative and have us reimagine it as we have a red light until we get the green light. I also want to share what our resources are here on campus, specifically as they are related to resources for sexual violence, and kind of go through the difference of confidential and non-confidential individuals. So anyone at the Wellness Center, any staff member associated with the Wellness Center is a confidential resource. We have the line, which is our confidential hotline for resources and advocacy around sexual violence. So please, 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 if you do not have this phone number in your phone, scan the QR code. I know it looks a little blurry, but it does still work. And please get that number in your phone just in case you ever need it. So everyone else on campus that is not a wellness center staff member is going to be a non-confidential resource. So that is things like professors or staff members or coaches or advisors. They are going to be non-confidential, meaning that if you disclose to them a sexual violence incident, they are mandated to report it to the university. And I'm telling you this because you will then get an email from the Dean of Students office notifying you of your rights and your resources. So I just want you to be aware of the difference between confidential and non-confidential resources. So again, just a reminder that the Wellness Center has both a location at Lakeshore campus as well as Water Tower. Both are actually located above the student bookstores. So here on Lakeshore, we are in the Granada Center on the 3rd floor, and down at Water Tower, we are in the Terry Student Center. So we offer a whole slew of different services, everything from medical appointments to mental health appointments to health education. We also can do STI and HIV testing. We do not have walk-in appointments, so please make an appointment online or call Dial-A-Nurse. I also want to make a quick little shameless plug. We are having the Wellness Fair at Lakeshore campus on October 5th. It's Wednesday, the first Wednesday of October. It's going to be at Damon Student Center upstairs in the Sister Jean room. We're going to be having free flu shots, free STI and HIV testing, and a whole bunch of different tables with different community providers, as well as different people from Loyola as well, with a lot of freebies and a lot of good information. So please attend. Again, that's going to be October 5th. It's from 12 to 4 p.m. Also, Alcohol EDU, which is that sexual assault prevention course that you are required to take. The deadline for that has been extended. So you should have gotten an email for this. Please complete it before September 23rd. That is the new deadline for Alcohol EDU. Lastly, I want to go over ways to get involved with the Wellness Center. So we have a newsletter that comes out every single Monday. Please scan the QR code if this is something you're interested in receiving. There's a lot of good content in it and some exclusive content. So we have been partnering up with a couple different local cafes, restaurants, different organizations, and they've been giving us a couple different like coupon codes for things. So I know upcoming there's going to be a free whole month of yoga. That coupon code is going to be coming out in the next couple weeks. So definitely scan that QR code if you're interested in getting our newsletter. We also have 3 different peer groups on campus that are associated with the Wellness Center. We have our peer health educators called the Wellness Advocates. We have Change, which is that middle one, and they are peer programming around gender-based violence. And then we also have the Body Project, which is a peer-led workshops challenging body image ideals and cultural ideals around what we call the thin ideal. So with that, this presentation is concluded. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. And if there's anything else, you have my contact info. My email is that first one. It's that aross15@luc.edu. So feel free to send me an email. By signing on to this webinar and signing up on LU Community for it, your credit, like you're already counted. So there's nothing else you need to do to like receive credit for coming to this. So I will see if I'll hang on and see if there are any questions that come through. Otherwise, I really appreciate you guys engaging with me and showing up today. And you are welcome to log off at this point. Have a great rest of your Thursday. So getting credit by logging on and signing up on LU Community, you're counted, you're good to go. There's nothing else you need to do. So great question that just came through for the few of us that are still here, if you're interested, was how should we respond if someone does not want law enforcement or medical attention? If it is something that is an emergent medical attention, if there is any concern of potential alcohol poisoning, I would in that situation go ahead and call campus safety because we have the Good Samaritan policy in place. No one would get in trouble in that sense. And obviously safety is our number one priority. So please, 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 even if they do not want medical attention and they need it and you feel they need it and your gut is telling you they need it, I would definitely still call. As far as law enforcement involvement, I guess it really is dependent on the situation and what's happening, but there are always other resources on campus you can reach out to, such as you could always go to your RA and be like, hey, what am I supposed to do in this situation? Because of course we don't expect you to know all the answers to absolutely everything and the best way to approach things, but we do want to respect the different relationships people have with law enforcement. So you always can go to RAs, you can always go to the dean of students there are ways we can file reports on there for different things that happen, whether it be a student in particular. Again, this is very kind of case by case based, but it is important to respect people and their comfort levels with law enforcement. But of course, if it's an emergency and there needs to be medical attention or safety is really being threatened, even if they're not comfortable with needing medical attention or law enforcement, I think going with your gut and sometimes going ahead and getting medical attention or law enforcement involved is necessary in certain situations. So feel free to send me an email and I can kind of elaborate a little bit more. If you have any follow-up questions on that, I'm super happy to answer those because I know that was like a very vague answer, but it is very case by case dependent as well. Great question though. I really appreciate you asking that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this call because I'm not seeing any more questions come through. So if there's anything that I missed or you want to follow up on anything, or maybe I didn't answer your question, please send me an email, aross15@luc.edu. All right, I really appreciate you all. Have a great rest of your Thursday and hopefully see you around.